In the innermost sanctum of Zaragatos's shrine, within the altar of Abaddon, a dark ritual is underway. A man named Makahim channels his power, preparing to summon a powerful entity. With focused intensity, he calls forth for Lord Abaddon to manifest himself. Meanwhile, at the Imperial Army's forward base, Supreme Commander Algren laughs maniacally, celebrating the Zaragatos army's retreat. He declares that they will forget the expedition for the day and enjoy a grand feast. His subordinate, Zenon, watches with a grim expression. Zenon confronts Algren, questioning the decision to feast on a battlefield in enemy territory. Algren casually dismisses his concerns, stating they have practically won since the enemy has retreated. Zenon voices his strong disagreement with a proposal from an earlier meeting. He questions the need to attack the Zaragatos tribe's main settlement on their way to the altar. Zenon argues that with the main forces at the shrine, only non-combatants remain in the settlement. Algren suggests it's a chance for the troops to replenish their morale. He then makes a sickening proposal. All acts of pillaging and violence within the settlement, including against the women, will be forgiven. Zenon is internally horrified by the repulsive suggestion from one of the 10 great lords. Algren smirks, thinking that Zenon truly takes him for a fool, but he is only pretending. He reflects that Zenon has not realized that stopping the army's advance at the settlement is his true objective. He has already received intel from his spy within the Zaragatos tribe. The information reveals that they intend to summon Abaddon very soon. Algren's plan is to let his forces pillage, send their location to the Zaragatos, and lure their restored warriors into an ambush. The Imperial guards left behind will be trapped with no escape, facing annihilation in a flawless encirclement. Zenon, unaware of the treachery, desperately calls out to his commander. Zenon begs Algren to reconsider pillaging the settlement, but Algren calls him tedious, pointing out that not even Commander Alfred raised any objections. Zenon is taken aback. He knows Alfred is not someone who would simply go along with Algren's every word. Watching from a distance, Alfred wonders why Zenon did not object to this plan. Algren smugly believes Alfred has finally recognized where he truly stands. Algren internally seethes, recalling how the Imperial guards luckily survived the last battle. He is confident that his new Plan B will ensure their total annihilation. Zenon is approached by Alfred. Alfred apologizes for interrupting him on his way to his personal tent. Alfred calmly asks Zenon if he has a moment to talk. Zenon appears distraught and hesitant. This conversation took place 3 days earlier at the main settlement of the Zaragatos base. Back in the present, Algren addresses his troops, announcing that the unguarded settlement is theirs for the taking. He declares that all violence and pillaging will be forgiven as their reward. His soldiers roar in approval. Algren's spy approaches, confirming that the Imperial guards are positioned ahead of the settlement. Algren notes that the guards have to deal with the Zaragatos tribe. The spy confirms he let the Zaragatos know the Imperial army was at the settlement. Algren grins, saying this gives them plenty of time to pillage before the main battle begins. Their celebration is cut short when a soldier runs up with a strange report. The soldier reports that there isn't a single person left in the settlement. Algren demands to know what he means, while the spy is equally confused. Algren realizes his own informant never mentioned this crucial detail. Suddenly, an arrow slices past Algren's cheek. He cries out in pain and shock. The arrow embeds itself in the ground nearby. His soldier cries out in alarm. A soldier yells that it's the Zaragatos tribe and that they are completely surrounded. Algren, his face contorted with rage and disbelief, screams in fury at the revelation. Elsewhere, Klimt remarks to Alfred that he never imagined someone could turn Algren's plan back on him so effectively. Alfred explains that he received intel about the spy among the enemy's ranks and used it against him. He imagines Algren never expected that all the Imperial Guard commanders who were supposed to be standing by in the settlement would defy his orders. Alfred reveals that the commanders were persuaded to dismiss Algren's order and are now advancing on the Zaragatos altar. Princess Ryuja proudly chimes in that she did her best too. Alfred acknowledges that without her, they couldn't have evacuated the civilians. Ryuja explains that since the Zaragatos are nomads, getting them to evacuate was easy. As a result, only Algren and his loyal Order of the Phoenix Wings were left in the settlement. Alfred adds that the spy has been misled to believe the Imperials in the settlement are the ones to be eliminated. As a bonus, Ryuja has re-established Lord Abaddon's blessing in a limited area to aid the Zaragatos warriors, much to Fina's silent dismay. Alfred knows the real issue lies ahead. Makahim is holed up in the shrine's altar, almost certainly intending to summon Abaddon. Fina asks nervously if Abaddon will fight them, since he's Alfred's friend. Alfred admits that Abaddon is the one factor he can't predict. He believes there's a very good chance Abaddon will answer the summons if it means he gets to fight him. Fina is left stunned and confused by this possibility. As they arrive at a great tree marking the altar, Alfred looks ahead with grim determination, ready to see what fate has in store. As Algren and his few remaining men flee through the forest, a panicked Zenon demands to know why the Zaragatos are attacking them. Algren, reeling, wonders why the Imperial Guards weren't standing by at the settlement as planned. One of his guards confirms that he saw no Imperial Guards when he scouted the settlement. The horrifying realization dawns on Algren: there is only one person who could have orchestrated this. His rage erupts as he screams Alfred's name, knowing he has been outmaneuvered once again. Haunted by past failures, Algren's mind flashes with images of his repeated defeats. Zenon reports that although they managed to escape, their forces have been nearly wiped out. He notes there are barely more than 10 of them left. Algren grimly explains that he had to sacrifice most of the Order of the Phoenix Wings as a distraction. He continues, stating that the troops left behind were surrounded and likely decimated by the Zaragatos. Zenon, enraged by Algren's calm demeanor, demands to know why he isn't taking responsibility for the losses. Algren simply laughs, declaring that there is no issue since they successfully broke through the enemy's encirclement. With a sinister smirk, Algren asks if the fact that they are both still alive isn't enough. Zenon, taken aback, concedes that he is right and that there is no issue. Algren then reveals his strategy. He has been deliberately acting the part of a foolish commander. He explains that their enemy would see more benefit in returning incompetent high-ranking officers than in killing them. He laughs, boasting that he has always had an insurance plan for them. Zenon, however, thinks to himself that Algren wasn't just acting, but has been truly incompetent from the start. Algren gloats that the Zaragatos' plans to make them pay were in vain. When Zenon asks what he means, Algren explains an ancient Zaragatos custom of torture. He claims they engage in homosexual acts to establish dominance, knowing it is a heretical sin for Imperials. Zenon is shocked, realizing such an act would be an unparalleled disgrace for an Imperial noble. Zenon is horrified by the idea of men having sex with other men, as Algren explains they treat prisoners like playthings to instill trauma. He confirms this is what the Zaragatos do to prisoners before freeing them. Algren shudders, admitting he doesn't even want to consider the possibility of it happening to them. The mere thought sends a shudder through Zenon, who sees it as a second coming of a past nightmare. Algren laughs maniacally, declaring there's no reason to fear since they have completely escaped. A hesitant Zenon agrees, trying to regain his composure. Zenon's confidence returns, boasting that as greater nobles, they are on a different level than common soldiers. He reasons that even if captured, they could simply bribe their way out with a hefty ransom. As Algren agrees, a rustle is heard from the nearby woods. A voice mockingly says they make him laugh. Suddenly, a massive axe crashes down in front of them, blocking their path. Algren screams in shock, demanding to know what's happening. Zaragatos' warriors emerge from the trees, surrounding them. The Zaragatos' tribe leader appears before Algren, questioning why they are there. He tells the trapped Imperials they cannot hope to escape within the tribe's own sacred territory. Zenon panics, remembering Algren's story about their method of torture. He realizes the terrible situation they are in. The Zaragatos' leader reveals he overheard their conversation, calling their information a gross misinterpretation. He clarifies that the tribe has no such custom, assuming it's misinformation, and that such a simple punishment would be letting them off too easy. He promises instead to instill a fear so profound it will be etched into their very souls. Refusing to listen, Algren tries to make his horse gallop away. But the Zaragatos' leader is too fast, telling him he will not escape. He strikes Algren, knocking him violently from his horse. Standing over the fallen commander, the Zaragatos' leader offers a hint of what's to come. He explains that they will start by tearing off one nail from his hands and feet every single day. Algren screams in agony as the torture begins. His horrified men can only watch as the leader says this is just the beginning. The leader continues his chilling description. The following day, they will dismember the finger from which the nail was removed. This process will repeat until no fingers remain, at which point they will use healing magic to restore them and start all over again. He adds that eventually, something amusing happens to the Imperials who endure this. The prisoners will begin to feel happiness on the days they only lose a nail, eventually begging to have their nails ripped off. As Zenon listens in terror, the leader announces that before taking them captive, they will hold a little rehearsal. Zenon completely breaks down, screaming that he's not involved and that it's all Algren's fault. The Zaragato's leader, who had thought any Imperial would do, looks at Zenon with newfound interest, remarking that they have found a lively specimen. Zenon panics, demanding to know what the Zaragato's leader means by a rehearsal. He screams for them to get their hands off him, struggling against their grip. The leader calmly explains that it is crucial to educate prisoners through fear and pain right from the start. At the leader's command, a warrior prepares to drive a sharp tool under Zenon's fingernail. The tool pierces the flesh beneath the nail. The young noble can only let out a choked gasp as the searing pain shoots through his hand. A blood-curdling scream echoes as the nail is torn from his finger. Zenon grits his teeth, trying to endure the agony. The Zaragato's leader seems almost impressed, remarking that Zenon is surprisingly resilient. Despite the pain, Zenon tries to assert his authority, reminding them of his high-ranking imperial family. His defiance is met with a swift kick that sends him sprawling. The leader reminds him that it is too early to act tough. He coldly recalls his earlier explanation. After a nail is ripped off, the dismemberment of that finger follows. Zenon protests that the dismemberment was supposed to happen the next day. He accuses them of going back on their word as a chisel is brought out. The leader smirks, retorting that a rehearsal should be done in full, as the chisel is placed against Zenon's finger. Zenon's pleas turn to desperate screams, begging them to stop. The hammer comes down, striking the chisel and severing his finger. His final, desperate scream is cut short by the sickening sound. Zenon collapses in agony, his face stained with blood and tears. Nearby, the Zaragato's leader rips the insignia from Algren's uniform, identifying him as the commander of the Imperial Army. With a terrifying look in his eyes, the leader informs Algren that he is next. Algren can only let out a shriek of pure terror. Al identifies the massive, ancient structure as Abaddon's altar. Tiana notes that the place seems empty, but Ryuja deduces that their enemies have retreated beyond it, meaning they have them cornered. Suddenly, shimmering silhouettes appear before them. Sylvie is startled by the sudden appearance of the figures. As the illusion solidifies, Sylvie recognizes their leader, Grand Chieftain Makahim. Ryuja quickly realizes their bodies aren't physically there. A light-haired youth in their party assumes it's an illusion spell powered by the altar. Al steps forward, addressing Makahim and stating that he has them surrounded. He suggests that the chieftain surrender. Makahim bursts into manic laughter, calling it a hilarious joke. He mocks the Imperials for having a talent for comedy in addition to their pride. Makahim scoffs at the idea of being surrounded, asking Princess Ryuja if she understands the significance of this location. Ryuja confirms that it is their shrine's altar, the very place where Lord Abaddon is said to have made his descent. Makahim declares that this is the only place with the requirements for the god of battle, Abaddon, to descend to the mortal realm once more. He promises to sacrifice many of his own tribesmen as offerings. As a powerful energy gathers, he calls for a divine being to come forth. Sylvie feels the immense fighting spirit and realizes with dread who is being summoned. The energy coalesces, revealing a powerful horned figure. Sylvie breathes his name in awe and fear, the god of battle, Abaddon. The Zaragato's tribesmen are in awe of Abaddon's divine visage, though one questions why the sacrifices haven't been offered yet. Makahim begins to thank the god, but Abaddon cuts him off. With a wild, ecstatic expression, Abaddon declares that this moment has finally arrived. Abaddon exclaims how many decades he has waited for this day. He then turns his gaze directly to Al, a look of recognition on his face, and states that it has truly been ages. With a furious roar, Abaddon lunges forward, screaming a name, Cedric. He lands a powerful punch on Al, sending a shockwave through the altar. Tiana and the others watch in horror, shocked by the immediate and energetic attack. However, Al stands his ground, catching the god's fist with his own hand. A smirk plays on Abaddon's face. Al squeezes, stopping the attack cold. With an explosive counterattack, Al punches Abaddon back, sending the god of battle flying across the altar and shattering the stone floor. Makahim can only stare in disbelief, stunned that someone could punch Lord Abaddon back. Abaddon's face is a mask of pure, manic joy as he prepares to strike. He lunges across the ruined altar, screaming Cedric's name with furious excitement. His fist connects with Cedric's face in a brutal impact. Cedric returns the blow, striking Abaddon with equal ferocity. The god of battle is sent flying back across the stone floor. Cedric watches him, a confident smirk playing on his lips. Cedric and Abaddon exchange a rapid series of devastating punches, the impacts echoing like thunder. The Zaragatos chieftain is utterly baffled by the display of power. Abaddon internally praises Cedric's indomitable spirit, acknowledging that he possesses the power of a god. He finds it impossible that a human could be capable of matching him. Lisa turns to Sylvie for answers, calling her by the name Deathblaze. As she watches the fight, Lisa begins to understand the sheer power being exchanged. She theorizes that Abaddon's punches are as powerful as Al's ultimate attack. Sylvie confirms that Lisa's assessment is correct. Lisa panics, questioning how Al can possibly survive such a barrage. Sylvie confidently explains that Al was prepared for this. She details his defensive strategy, a combination of numerous magic barriers and a masterful technique to deflect the force of the blows. Lisa is stunned to hear that he can simply divert the attacks. Sylvie elaborates on the technique, explaining that Al meets each attack prematurely to neutralize its power. She is in awe of how effectively he is deflecting the god's power. Abaddon's excitement peaks as he praises Cedric's unbreakable defense. Abaddon grins, eager to test Cedric with a different kind of assault. He closes the distance and lands a heavy blow. He unleashes a powerful uppercut, demanding to know if Cedric can neutralize it. Both combatants are locked in the moment of impact, their expressions wild. He unleashes his ultimate technique, Tempest Nova, a massive explosion of energy that engulfs the entire area. The explosion is visible for miles, dwarfing the surrounding landscape. From orbit, the attack flashes brightly against the curvature of the Earth. The altar is completely obliterated in a blinding column of light and destructive energy. Sylvie's barrier cracks, but manages to protect the girls from the cataclysmic explosion. Makahim is aghast at the scale of destruction. Abaddon realizes his opponent has survived. Cedric emerges from the destruction, seemingly unharmed. He wipes away a bit of blood, a crazed grin on his face. Abaddon is thrilled by his opponent's resilience, eagerly anticipating the continuation of their fight. Abaddon roars with excitement, ready for more. Lisa questions Al's chances of victory, but Sylvie reveals that Abaddon has yet to use his full power. She explains his special ability. He can nullify any attack he perceives within his range. Lisa despairs, wondering how Al can possibly defeat an opponent with such a power. Unseen by the fighters, a meteorite speeds towards the planet. Al calmly addresses his old foe, commenting on his unchanged, aggressive nature. Abaddon rejects his old name and demands to be called Dark Nebula. Eager for more fighting, he challenges Cedric to a second round. Al calmly tells him there is no need for another round. He internally recalls Abaddon's unique power to nullify anything he recognizes as an attack. He concludes that the solution is an attack from an unperceivable distance. A meteorite, his chosen projectile, burns as it enters the atmosphere, catching Abaddon completely by surprise. The supersonic projectile strikes Abaddon from behind before he can react. Al catches the meteorite, informing Abaddon that this single strike is all that's needed. Holding the still glowing meteorite, Al gives a victorious smile and declares the battle finished. Cedric stands over a cratered Abaddon, challenging him to get up. He knows an attack of that caliber isn't enough to keep the guard down. With a firm grip on the shattered ground, Abaddon prepares to rise. Abaddon springs to his feet, a wild grin spreading across his face. He exclaims that every time they fight, Cedric finds a new way to surprise him, declaring him the best opponent. Cedric smirks, replying that it's a necessary precaution when facing a monster with the ability to nullify any perceived attack. The tension breaks as Abaddon laughingly throws an arm around Cedric, declaring it's time for a drink. Watching from the sidelines, Lisa and Sylvie are stunned. Lisa can't comprehend the sudden shift from a deadly battle to a friendly outing. Sylvie calmly explains that they were never seriously trying to kill each other. Sylvie explains that since Abaddon was summoned mid-ritual, and Cedric is only at 60% of his prime strength, neither is at full power. She concludes their battle was nothing more than a friendly greeting. Staring at the massive crater their greeting created, Lisa yells in disbelief. Cedric agrees to get drinks, but only if it's a full-course meal. He then turns serious, reminding Abaddon that there's something else to deal with first. Abaddon soberly agrees. Pointing a finger, he gathers a ball of light and declares he will dispose of the fools. Abaddon turns his gaze toward the defeated Zaragato's tribe. A beam of energy strikes the tribe's chieftain, trapping him in a vortex of power. The energy dissipates, revealing the target to be a mere illusion. Abaddon then confronts the real tribe members, calling out a woman he identifies as Zaragato's royalty. She fearfully confirms her identity. With a menacing smirk, Abaddon says he's already heard about their deeds from Deathblaze but wants to hear the details from her directly. At a nearby military camp, soldiers gossip about the recent earthquake, attributing it to someone summoning Abaddon. Commander Alfred overhears, amazed that the battle might be resolved without his intervention. He reflects on how Cedric has performed miracles before and wonders if he can do it again. Alfred hopes that Cedric will succeed in negotiating a peaceful reconciliation with the Zaragato's tribe. Back at the altar, he announces the start of a meeting to negotiate peace between them and the Facilia Empire. Lisa questions if this is truly a peace negotiation. Abaddon cuts in, getting straight to the point by pulling a knife. He declares that all of them are sentenced to death. As Lisa wonders if they should intervene, Cedric calmly says no. The Zaragato's princess expresses faith in Abaddon's judgment. Abaddon addresses their chieftain, reminding him of the blessing he once gave the tribe. He recounts how their ancestors' courage and unwavering spirit in the face of any foe was what originally earned his respect. Abaddon's tone turns sharp as he asks what has become of them now. He condemns the current chieftain for assassinating the previous royal family and being willing to sacrifice his own people. The chieftain desperately argues that fighting a battle they can't win is pointless. With a furious shout, Abaddon declares that despite their underhanded tactics, they still utterly lost. He concedes that striking at a weak point is a valid strategy, but lectures that if one chooses such a path, they must execute it perfectly. Abaddon turns to Cedric and asks him to summon the Abyss, the place his faction sends criminals, and a massive gate materializes from the ground. Lisa cries out in horror at the realization of their destination. Abaddon reassures the onlookers, claiming to be kind compared to Cedric. He explains that his own punishment offers a chance at freedom if they survive. When Lisa questions his earlier mention of a death penalty, he clarifies that the Abyss of Hell is a dungeon teeming with monsters. He cheekily adds that while he and Cedric could conquer it with a few scratches, for the princess, survival is a mere roll of the dice. The tribe members fall to their knees, begging for mercy and admitting to their despicable actions. Abaddon coldly dismisses their pleas, stating they didn't object when their own brethren were sent to die, making this a fitting punishment. He specifies that one among them deserves an even harsher fate, the chieftain, a scumbag without a single fragment of elegance. Leaning in close to the terrified chieftain, Abaddon roars that he hopes the man isn't foolish enough to think he will get off scot-free, even if he manages to survive the abyss. While the terrified Zaragato's warriors cry out, Abaddon stands before them, ready to deliver judgment. He informs the scum chief that his turn will come later. First, he will deal with the others. With a powerful sweep of his tail, Abaddon declares he will begin by punishing the convicts. The warriors are sent flying, screaming in pain and terror. They beg him to stop, not wanting to die as their chieftain Makahim watches in horror. Unmoved by the screams, Abaddon watches the chaos unfold. He singles out one warrior who remains silent, asking if he thinks praying will be enough to save himself. The warrior accepts his fate, admitting they have strayed far from their origins as proud fighters and that nothing can excuse their foul actions. Impatient, Abaddon tells him to get to the point. The warrior makes one final request, to embrace his death by walking toward it on his own 2 feet, as a true Zaragato's warrior would. Cedric watches as Abaddon considers the plea. Cedric gives a subtle nod of approval. The warrior is unbound. He tearfully thanks his lord for the mercy. He then walks with dignity toward the open gate. A stunned Lisa looks on. Lisa questions if sending him through the gate is okay, as it's almost a guaranteed death, but Sylvie reminds her they were complicit in a plot to sacrifice thousands. Lisa watches him go, believing he still has a chance to turn things around. Sylvie reassures her not to worry, stating that their lord is an exceedingly kind god. As the warrior steps through the portal, he is stunned by a bright flash of light. He finds himself not in a hellscape, but on a beautiful, sunlit beach. Sylvie explains that Abaddon always leaves a path to redemption open for those who prove their nature is not beyond salvation, as the gate shuts. Abaddon explains that while he normally doesn't interfere in mortal matters, these men are an exception for their scummy business. Now, with only the chieftain left, Abaddon asks if he has anything to say. Makahim trembles in terror, realizing the direness of his situation. Makahim's mind races, knowing Abaddon's judgment is absolute and he has no hope of overturning it. A desperate idea forms, and he asks Abaddon to confirm his policy of non-interference. Abaddon affirms this, clarifying he's only involved because they are his followers. Hearing this, a wicked smirk spreads across Makahim's face. Abaddon looks on, confused by the sudden change. With newfound confidence, Makahim declares that he no longer worships Abaddon as a god. Abaddon is utterly shocked by the declaration. The chieftain loudly proclaims he is converting away from his faith, renouncing Abaddon entirely. Makahim taunts him, certain that the renowned god of battle would never contradict his own words. Abaddon nonchalantly scratches his head and concedes the point. Makahim internally celebrates, believing his plan has worked perfectly. With a wide, sharp-toothed grin, Abaddon agrees. Since Makahim is no longer his follower, it's right that he leaves the rest to his fellow humans. Princess Ruja is shocked by the sudden turn of events. Cedric addresses Princess Ruja, telling her that her judgment will now decide Makahim's fate. He reminds her that she is the true royal family of Zaragatos. Abaddon cheerfully confirms he no longer has the authority to judge the man, leaving Makahim stunned. Ruja glares at Makahim, the man who assassinated her father and seized control of their tribe. Ruja states that Makahim also initiated the summoning ritual intending to use tens of thousands as sacrifices, a punishment she feels is beyond her authority alone. Therefore, she declares she will explain everything to the remaining warriors and decide his fate with them, much to Makahim's horror. While Lisa worries he'll be killed instantly, Sylvie makes a suggestion. She proposes they tie him to a tree so no one can lay a hand on him. Lisa thinks the idea is genius, though she also thinks Sylvie is a demon for coming up with it. Sylvie elaborates that they will scatter rocks for the tribe to throw at him. Ruja declares the plan perfect, announcing that if he survives for 72 hours, his sins will be forgiven. Makahim can only stammer in disbelief at the cruel punishment. Makahim lets out a final, agonizing scream. Several days later in the Empire, an official notes that it's about time for a report on the decisive battle to arrive. One official states that with Algren leading the troops, there was no way he could have avoided dealing a significant blow to the Imperial Guards. The other agrees, calling Algren the perfect man to lead an army to its defeat. He smirks, noting that even if the Empire somehow won, their forces should have taken significant losses. Just then, a knock at the door interrupts them. A messenger bursts in, excitedly bringing news about the battle. She announces an overwhelming victory for the Imperial army, reporting that they claimed victory with no casualties, leaving the two officials speechless. The two officials scream in disbelief, unable to comprehend how the Imperial army could have suffered no casualties. In the throne room, the Emperor reels from the news, demanding confirmation that Alfred led the Imperial Guards to an overwhelming victory. He reflects that everyone expected them to lose the war, and now the winds of fate have changed course. A shiver runs down his spine as he wonders about the true identity of the man who has stirred up this tempest. At the army's camp, Abaddon triumphantly calls for Cedric, declaring it's time to eat more meat. Alfred approaches the barbecue, reminding everyone he'd only join if there were full-course meals. Abaddon slaps down more meat, telling Alfred to stop being so picky. He then proceeds to devour everything with gusto. Abaddon loudly proclaims that this is how true men ought to feast. Alfred calmly advises that one needs vegetables to avoid bowel cancer. Baffled by the specific medical term, Abaddon questions what he is even talking about. He roars in frustration, calling Alfred a foolish brat. Cedric interrupts, meticulously dictating the precise cooking times for the meat, much to Lisa's surprise. Abaddon glares, realizing he's now being told to eat vegetables as well. He relents and commands Deathblaze to roast some onions and carrots, shocking Lisa with his compliance. As the meal winds down, Abaddon announces he will head home and asks about Alfred's plans. Alfred states his intention to return to the Empire, but adds that he will bring Princess Ruja as a prisoner. Abaddon is shocked, immediately suspecting foul play. He quickly dismisses the thought, trusting Alfred's character, and demands to know what he is planning. Alfred explains that they have post-war problems to address, as the 10 Great Lords would be displeased if they returned without conquering the Zaragatos territory. Lisa agrees, noting the Empire would worry about a counter-invasion from the remaining Zaragatos soldiers. Alfred clarifies this is why he is taking Princess Ruja as a prisoner, purely for appearances to show the Lords they have prevented any retaliation. Abaddon questions if the lords will accept this, but Alfred states their true objective was to stage a coup against the empire. He explains that if the Zaragatos were to counterattack, the lords would use the resulting chaos to enact their coup. Even if there is no counterattack, the lords would just find another way. Thus, they only need to create the appearance of suppressing the threat. Abaddon understands the political maneuvering, remarking with disgust that the empire is full of sellouts. Lisa nervously asks Alfred to promise he will keep the princess safe, and he confirms he will bring her to Brim Cross. Lisa reminds Alfred that his own position is in jeopardy, as he was supposed to be removed from the 10 Great Lords. Alfred confirms that an imperial council will likely be held upon his and Algren's return to the capital. Lisa recalls that the Emperor stopped the previous vote, but worries the lords could now brute force a new decision. Lisa realizes that if he is removed, it would be impossible for him to keep the princess safe in Brim Cross. Alfred calmly acknowledges this possibility. He then turns to Abaddon, stating that this brings him to his next point. He has a wish to ask of him. Abaddon grins, telling the human to state his wish, and if it is within his power, he will consider it. With a slight smirk, Alfred begins to state his request. Abaddon admits he doesn't understand how this plan will help Alfred survive the Imperial Council. Alfred replies with a confident smile that if everything goes according to his plan, he is quite optimistic. 1 month later, the Imperial Guards make their triumphant return to the capital of the Facilia Empire. As the guards parade through the streets, the crowd whispers about the expedition. A rumor spreads that the Imperial Guards used the Great Lord's soldiers as a diversion, sacrificing them as fodder. The citizens decry this as social discrimination, making them despise the Empire. Lisa notices the eerie atmosphere, feeling as though the crowds are staring daggers at them. Cedric confirms her suspicion and points out a specific civilian in the crowd. He notes that while she appears to be a farmer, Lisa should look closely at her fingernails. Lisa observes that her nails look perfectly normal, even pretty. Cedric points out that her nails and shoes are too clean for a farmer, and her skin is too pale. He explains to a confused Lisa that this is information warfare, proving their victory has angered the 10 Great Lords. Lisa is shocked, realizing the woman is an actor hired to spread malicious rumors. Cedric remarks that their foes are rotten, but he believes Master Alfred can hold his own against them. Inside the palace, Alfred kneels before the Emperor. The Emperor enthusiastically praises Alfred's exploits and announces a grand award ceremony to reward him. However, Lord Algren interrupts, asking His Majesty to wait. Algren states that there are matters to address before any ceremony can be held. He addresses Alfred directly, reminding him of their unresolved issues. He mockingly notes that luck won't save Alfred from the wrath of the 10 Great Lords, then says he has a proposal. With a triumphant shout, Algren proposes they hold an imperial council of the 10 Great Lords. The Emperor watches with a grim expression. The topic, he declares, will be the succession of the head of House Belial, directly challenging Alfred. In the throne room, Algren Belial scoffs at the Emperor's defense of Alfred, calling his demand foolish. The Emperor passionately reminds them that Alfred risked his life fighting for the Facilia Empire. He declares he will never accept such a disrespectful proposition to strip a hero of his title. Chancellor Robert interrupts, smugly reminding His Majesty of an important detail he seems to have forgotten. As the great doors creak open, Algren begins to explain the rules of the council. He concludes that all decisions are made by a majority vote among the lords now assembled in the hall. Chancellor Robert announces that all 10 members are now assembled and asks if they should begin the emergency council. Powerless, the Emperor can only grit his teeth in frustration. He apologizes to Alfred in his thoughts for being unable to protect him. However, Alfred speaks up, stating that he does not mind beginning the council now. Alfred points out that the only other person qualified to lead House Belial is Algren, whose whereabouts, or even if he is alive, are unknown. Chancellor Robert agrees, noting that Algren vanished at the Zaragatos settlement. With a sly grin, Robert declares that this leaves only one other suitable candidate, Henry, Algren's second son. The Emperor protests, arguing that it is unprecedented for a 10-year-old child to become one of the 10 Great Lords. Algren calmly tells him to compose himself. Chancellor Robert adds that it is a reasonable option to avoid stress over such trivial matters. He menacingly states that any attempt by the Emperor to resist is futile. Algren formally commences the council of the 10 Great Lords. He proposes that they strip Alfred of his position, make the missing Algren the new head, and have the child Henry substitute as provisional head. He then asks if anyone opposes this. The Emperor immediately raises his hand in opposition. Algren notes that His Majesty holds 3 votes, bringing the count to 3 against the proposal, and asks if anyone else objects. Silence fills the hall as the other lords remain still. Chancellor Robert smirks to himself, confident that no one would dare oppose their faction, which effectively controls the council. Suddenly, a hand rises from the crowd. Chancellor Robert shouts in disbelief, demanding to know the meaning of this. Roderick Folcart declares his opposition to the proposition. He states that considering Lord Alfred's achievements, it would be foolish to strip him of his authority. As Chancellor Robert sputters in confusion, Roderick asks if he has forgotten that his domain borders the Zaragatos' territory. Alfred then speaks, revealing that while the Zaragatos did surrender, it was not to the Empire, they surrendered directly to him. Roderick elaborates that he heard Abaddon, the King of Hell, took a liking to Alfred's fighting prowess. Therefore, to prevent the Zaragatos from raiding his domain, he will support Lord Alfred, who holds significant influence over them. Algren grits his teeth, realizing Roderick is a shrewd man who only aligns with them when it serves his interests. Algren wonders how Alfred managed to curry favor with a renowned King of Hell. Alfred thinks to himself that he'll have to thank Abaddon for this favor. A flashback reveals his request to create a scenario where the Zaragatos tribe surrendered to him personally due to the whim of their god, Abaddon. In the flashback, Abaddon questions the meaning of this plan, adding that as a result, they won't be liable for reparations. Alfred emphasizes that the important part is the appearance of it being a divine whim in the eyes of outsiders. A confused Abaddon asks if Alfred truly thinks this will help him survive the Imperial Council. Alfred confidently replies that if everything goes according to his plan, he is quite optimistic. Back in the present, Roderick declares that his vote brings the total against the proposal to 4. Algren angrily reminds Roderick that there will be a steep price for his defiance. Roderick asks Chancellor Robert if he truly believes he would willingly fight a losing battle. His confidence shocks Robert. As Chancellor Robert shouts in disbelief, another lord stands to oppose the motion. The Emperor recognizes him as Sirio Marsilius. Sirio declares that he stands with His Majesty, explaining he has stayed silent until now in the face of the Council's tyranny. A flashback shows the Emperor questioning Sirio's sudden change of heart, recalling that he was advised to outwardly obey the lords. Theodore, the former commander, explains that they had only acted passively to evade the worst-case scenario. Theodore continues in the flashback, stating that their time of silence has ended and it is time for an elegant counteroffensive. Sirio remarks on the plan, asking Theodore if he isn't beginning to resemble him a little too much. In the present, Chancellor Robert fumes that 2 lords have decided to rebel against them. He insists it is not enough to sway the remaining members. Algren calculates that despite the unexpected developments, the tally stands at 5 votes against and 6 in favor. He adds that even if Alfred's vote were included, it would only result in a 6-6 tie, preserving the status quo. However, Algren smirks, declaring it unreasonable to grant a vote to the very person whose authority is being challenged. At that moment, Alfred addresses the Emperor, asking for a single reward to celebrate his expedition. The Emperor is surprised, asking if he wants a reward right now. With a snap of his fingers, Alfred makes his request. He asks His Majesty to break the deadlock with his own hands. Alfred watches as he realizes this was the plan all along. The Emperor grins, realizing he is the only one who can fight this battle. He recalls Article 5 of the Imperial Constitution, concerning the right to participate in the Council. The Emperor recites the law. The Commander-in-Chief of the Magic Guild appointed by the Emperor wields the highest military power. He continues, stating that the Commander-in-Chief's insight is crucial for the Empire's defense. Algren's heart pounds in sudden fear. The law concludes that this insight must be taken into account during the Council. Chancellor Robert stammers in disbelief as he realizes what is happening. A figure steps through the doorway, whom the Emperor recognizes as Sir Ammon. He declares that he is appointing Ammon, the acting commander, to a new post. Looking towards Ammon, the Emperor officially appoints him as the Commander-in-Chief of the Magic Guild. This appointment grants the Commander-in-Chief 1 vote in the Council of the 10 Great Lords. Alfred smiles, turning to the stunned council members. Ammon, now the Commander-in-Chief, coolly asks if they should resume the council. The Emperor looks on with a triumphant, crazed expression. The opposing lords are stunned by the Emperor's move, realizing Sir Ammon has been appointed as the Commander-in-Chief of the Magic Guild. One of the lords quickly deduces that this means Ammon now possesses a vote in the council. Algren looks on in disbelief, unable to process the sudden turn of events. Ammon coolly asks if they truly believe he is planning to oppose the 10 great lords. Ammon scoffs at the insinuation, finding the idea that he would oppose them insulting. He proudly announces that he was appointed commander-in-chief by the decree of the emperor himself. Ammon reminds them that, according to the imperial constitution, the magic guild's purpose is to support the empire and the emperor. With a smirk, Ammon states that he will simply follow his majesty's will, seeing nothing unusual about it. Algren internally seethes, never expecting such a bold move from Ammon. He suspects Ammon's true aim is the throne, just like his own faction. Without further delay, Ammon casts his vote in support of the emperor's opinion. The council murmurs as they realize the vote is now tied, 6 against 6. The emperor erupts with a triumphant roar, declaring the matter settled. He announces that according to the outcome of the vote, Alfred will retain his position as a member of the 10 great lords and asks if there are any objections. The defeated lords can only grind their teeth in fury. 2 months later, a man named Leopold stands in a bustling town, utterly bewildered by the clamor around him. Leopold is in awe at the Brim Cross Central Market, which is teeming with people. He can't believe that the empire's former trash heap has transformed into such a developed town. His attention is suddenly caught by a bright shine from a nearby stall. He recognizes rare spices like jade pepper and scarlet saffron. Looking around, he sees an unbelievable assortment of valuable goods, from azure feather cloth to rainbow snake silk. He marvels that specialties from various races are all available and turns to Commander Alfred to ask if this isn't strange. Leopold points out that the prices of these valuable commodities are remarkably low. He finds it hard to believe that something as rare as jade pepper, said to be worth its weight in gold, is being sold so affordably. Alfred explains that the reason for the low prices is that they do not involve any intermediaries. He elaborates that until now, the Empire has largely steered away from interacting with demi-humans. Alfred details how, without proper trade routes, demi-human goods pass through many hands, with merchants taking a cut at each step, leading to inflated prices. But in Brim Cross, which is open to demi-human trade, such practices are absent, resulting in the current low prices. Leopold nods in understanding. Alfred adds that merchants can procure specialties here at low prices to sell in other parts of the empire, though he may eventually implement trade taxes. Even so, he is confident these goods will reach imperial citizens at a much lower price than before. Leopold is impressed, understanding now why merchants are flocking to the city. Alfred explains that the new commerce will generate a profit, which he intends to use for expanding the orphanage. Leopold reflects on how unbelievable it is that they were just at war with the Zaragatos tribe a short while ago. Alfred tells Leopold to come along, as there's something else he wants to show him. Leopold is utterly flabbergasted by what he sees. He sees members of the Zaragatos tribe plowing the fields as Princess Ruja greets Lord Alfred, who commends her work. As Leopold struggles to comprehend the scene, Princess Ruja explains that she dispatched the finest members of her clan to cultivate the land for farming. Leopold is still confused, wondering how their former enemies are now tilling imperial soil. He whispers to Alfred, expressing concern that the battle-hungry Zaragatos tribe might cause trouble in the city. Ruja overhears and tells Leopold that his words are an insult. Ruja assures him that she chose the finest members of her clan, well-disciplined professional soldiers, who will cause no trouble. Leopold is shocked at the concept of soldiers who plow fields, a thing he's never heard of, but Alfred explains they are called settler soldiers. Nearby, Ammon's attendant recognizes the term from a country he used to live in. Alfred elaborates that with monsters roaming the fields and a battle against monster-kind looming, the Zaragatos soldiers, skilled in both cultivation and combat, are an irreplaceable asset. Leopold, though finding the concept unconventional, admits it makes perfect logical sense and calls Commander Alfred incredible. Alfred humbly states that his knowledge is nothing impressive, merely a collection of things he's seen and heard on his journeys. Ammon's attendant reflects on Master Alfred. He recalls the numerous improvements Alfred has brought to Brim Cross, each more advanced than anything else in the Empire. These innovations include underground drainage systems, water storage, fire prevention compartments, and lightning rods. Though Alfred claims these are technologies from other countries, some are completely unheard of. The attendant thinks that no matter how many books he reads about other countries, he cannot find the source of Alfred's knowledge. He knows Alfred has traveled extensively, even to the netherworld, but he cannot fathom where his master gained such profound wisdom. The scene shifts to the ominous monsterkind capital. Their 100 Generals 8 Levitain addresses Ammon by name. She states that the 100 Generals Council is almost upon them. Levitain reminds him that the deadline for the Facilia Empire to deliver 10,000 human sacrifices to the monsterkind is almost here. She coldly asks the shuddering Ammon how things are progressing on that front. Levitain reminds a kneeling Ammon that the deadline for the Facilia Empire to deliver 10,000 human sacrifices to the monsterkind is fast approaching, and she asks for a status report. Ammon, sweating, reassures her that it's an annual event and everything is progressing steadily. Levitain changes the subject, congratulating Ammon on his recent promotion to Commander-in-Chief of the Magic Guild. Ammon is startled by her addressing him as General Levitain. He humbly thanks her for her kind words. She then gets to her true concern, asking if he has found any trace of her child, Beelzebub. Ammon's heart pounds with fear. He stammers that unfortunately, he still has no clue as to their whereabouts. Levitain warns him that he has until the 100 Generals Council next month to find them. Her voice turns cold as she asks if he understands the consequences of failure. Trembling, Ammon acknowledges her threat. Levitain offers a hollow apology to Ammon. She blames her own pampering for making her child so uncontrollable. She claims that her position as an executive forces her to be determined in the search, even if it pains her to pressure him. Ammon begs her to stop, insisting she doesn't need to lower her head to him. But Levitain continues, saying that with that being said, she nonchalantly snaps her fingers. Ammon is suddenly overcome by a familiar, dreadful sensation as a strange device materializes above him. As Ammon is racked with pain, Levitain states that he has been unable to locate Beelzebub after all this time. With a terrifying smile, she tells him it is only right that he bear the responsibility for his failure. Ammon screams in terror, realizing it's happening just like last time. He recoils in horror, remembering how she severed his fingers previously and wondering what she'll do now. Before him stands an Iron Maiden. Levitain questions why he is so incompetent, having pondered why he has been unable to succeed in his search. Levitain declares that she has concluded he doesn't feel enough remorse for his failures. As Ammon cries out in denial, she explains that without remorse, one cannot hope to improve or avoid repeating the same mistakes. With a sadistic grin, she says she has prepared a special place for his self-reflection. She feigns regret for what she claims is a harsh but necessary punishment. With a crazed expression, Levitain orders Ammon to enter his place of introspection. Offering to lend a hand, she uses her power to float his helpless body towards the open Iron Maiden. As Ammon screams in protest, Levitain sadistically tells him to enjoy his time in the Iron Maiden. The heavy door slams shut. Meanwhile, in the Imperial capital, two lords discuss a pressing matter. The topic is the monsterkind's demand for 10,000 human sacrifices. One lord finds the annual tradition unfortunate, but the other, a mustachioed nobleman, questions what he means. The subordinate reminds the lord that he was a vehement critic of the late Commander-in-Chief Cedric's proposal to abolish the annual offering. His subordinate agrees, but notes that for nobles to prosper, losing so many commoners or slaves is quite regrettable. The lord sees his point, musing that he must assume the emperor's seat to enact their plan, constructing breeding grounds for commoners. The subordinate mentions that their research indicates orcs in heat are the most efficient partners for maximizing reproduction, though the lord says they'll think on that another time. He then smirks, revealing he has a brilliant idea for procuring this year's sacrifices. The nobleman listens intently. He explains that while sacrifices are normally collected from throughout the empire, this time there's a much more convenient place to gather them. He reveals his target, Alfred's domain, Brim Cross, and asks if the lord is aware of its current situation. The nobleman recalls hearing that the former trash heap has become a bustling economic center thanks to demi-human immigrants and merchants. The subordinate confirms this, sneering that it's ridiculous for demi-human immigrants to call themselves imperial citizens. The subordinate proposes offering up the demi-humans as sacrifices in favor of the average citizens, arguing it would appease even those strongly opposed to the annual tradition. The nobleman agrees, realizing that if sacrifices must be made, it makes sense to start with the outsiders first. They conclude that this is the will of not only the Imperial Council, but also the common citizens, an idea the emperor cannot publicly oppose. The Lord realizes that if the Emperor tried to protect the demi-humans, it would imply he agrees with sacrificing imperial citizens, causing the populace to lose faith. He then asks how they plan to gather the sacrifices from Brim Cross, which is currently filled with Zaragato's warriors. The subordinate has a solution: dispatch the Order of the Headless Knights. The Headless Knights, a group of former death row prisoners, are deemed the most fit for the job of collecting sacrifices. Their leader arrives in Brim Cross, licking his lips in anticipation and telling his men it's time to get to work. In the imperial court, the Emperor is shocked to learn that the Order of the Headless Knights has been dispatched to collect sacrifices in Brim Cross. His aide confirms that while it is still a rumor, nearly everyone in the imperial court has heard of the operation. The Emperor clenches his fist in frustration, lamenting that he is, once again, the last to receive critical news. The aide apologizes profusely, finding it difficult to keep up with the movements of the Chancellor's faction, but the Emperor tells him to be at ease. The Emperor clarifies that he is simply blaming himself for being so useless. He explains that the Order of the Headless Knights has already made their way to Brim Cross, a city populated by demi-humans and the Zaragato's tribe. The aide asks if the Emperor intends to oppose the sacrifice collection, which will be decided at the upcoming Imperial Council. The Emperor grimly states that opposing it is an impossible task. He explains the political trap: the citizens would gladly support sacrificing only the demi-human immigrants rather than commoners from across the empire. The aide reasons that every citizen outside of Brim Cross would applaud such a proposition, as no one wants to be sacrificed to monsters. The Emperor, however, states his duty is to represent the will of his citizens. Therefore, he intends to abstain from voting in the council, a move that will all but ensure the sacrifices are taken from Brim Cross. His aide cries out in disbelief, questioning if His Majesty is truly fine with that. The Emperor explodes with rage, shouting that he is greatly opposed to the plan, considering it a deception. As the Emperor grinds his teeth in fury, his aide watches on. The aide realizes that the person suffering most from this news is the Emperor himself. The Emperor acknowledges that Alfred is the governor of Brim Cross. If Alfred proves capable of overcoming these dire straits, the Emperor intends to appoint him as his representative. He then declares his intention to transfer all of his imperial authority to Alfred. The aide is stunned by the proposal to appoint an imperial representative. He points out that while possible within the constitution, it is simply unprecedented. The Emperor reminds him that he didn't appeal the proposition when they discussed it before. The aide argues that he only agreed because the Emperor was discussing appointing the late Commander-in-Chief, asking if Alfred's talent is truly on par with Cedric's. The Emperor declares that everything will depend on the outcome of this situation, which will prove if Alfred can truly perform miracles. The scene shifts to a clamorous tavern in Brim Cross. Inside the tavern, whispers fill the air as an elf waitress and a catgirl waitress look on with concern. A rowdy patron, a member of the Headless Knights, slams his mug down, complaining that his drink is warm as another waitress apologizes. The man then calls out to the elf waitress, telling her he has a question. He smirks, noting that the tavern only employs elves and cat people, and crudely asks which of them is tighter. The waitress is taken aback while his companion laughs, making a vile comment. The first man adds an equally disgusting remark about elves. The elf waitress lets out a small cry of fear. The tavern's security guard steps in, telling the men that the establishment is for regular people and asks them to keep it classy. Before he can finish his warning, one of the knights lunges at him with blinding speed. The knight viciously bites the guard's arm. The guard lets out a scream of agony. The attacker laughs maniacally, mocking the man's shriek. Despite his pain, the guard grits his teeth, vowing that they won't get away with this. The knight taunts the injured guard, asking if he seriously doesn't know who they are. The guard suddenly recognizes the flame tattoo on the man's face. He realizes they are the Order of the Headless Knights, a group formed of pardoned death row prisoners and felons from all over the empire. The Headless Knights are valuable troops for the Chancellor's faction, fighting with beast-like ferocity and no fear of death. The guard screams in terror, finally understanding who he's dealing with. The knights laugh, boasting that because of who they are, the imperial law means nothing to them. The knight gloats that the Chancellor will simply clear any trouble with the city's lord. The injured guard mutters how terrible the situation is as the catgirl waitress approaches. He explains to her that the knights are protected by the imperial court and can act with impunity. The elf waitress urgently tells her colleague that she must follow their every order unless she wants to die. The elf waitress shouts that they must not be defied, even if the knights try to force themselves on them. Hearing this, the knight feigns offense, claiming they won't force anyone. He and his companion laugh, saying they only want a relationship based on consent. With a lecherous grin, he then suggests she can start by voluntarily raising her skirt. The waitress is speechless with disgust and fear. Crying, the elf waitress reluctantly lifts her skirt. The knight laughs and orders her onto the table. As she sits down, he peers under her skirt, humming thoughtfully. The knight complains that he can't see anything with her legs closed. He demands she open them or they will do it for her. His companion chants for her to open up, as the main knight gives her a 3-second countdown. He rushes through the countdown. Just as the countdown finishes, the knight's head is violently slammed onto the table. He grunts in pain and confusion. A mysterious figure now stands before the shocked knight and the terrified waitress. The newcomer Alfred calmly finishes the countdown, 0. On Brim Cross Main Street, a commotion erupts as civilians recognize the approaching order of the Headless Knights. An order is shouted for everyone to return to their homes immediately. One of the knights, a man with a mohawk and facial tattoos, menacingly corners a young woman, cackling with glee at her terror. The mohawked knight stands triumphantly on a rooftop, announcing their arrival to the terrified citizens below. He boasts that they have the Imperial Chancellor's support, and their only order is to cause chaos. With a savage grin, he leaps down to begin their cruel hunt. Just as the knight is about to strike, his arm is caught. He turns in confusion, surprised by the sudden intervention. A powerful blow sends him flying across the street. Stunned and enraged, he demands to know what's going on. His attacker, Deathblaze, declares that she is part of Lord Alfred's police corps and will not allow any further outrage. Watching from a nearby rooftop, Alfred notes to himself that his plan is proceeding smoothly, with the Zaragatos troops already patrolling the town. From his vantage point, Alfred decides to leave the finishing touches to his subordinates. Below, his forces, including a determined Thylos, spring into action. Deathblaze leaps towards another group, her wild expression terrifying the Headless Knights. Deathblaze neutralizes another knight with a powerful kick. Lisa spots one of the assailants fleeing into an alley. Alfred's voice rings out, telling them not to bother giving chase. Deathblaze proudly declares she has already taken down the fleeing knight, dropping his unconscious body at her feet. From the rooftop, Alfred expresses relief that Deathblaze followed his orders not to kill anyone. He claps softly, grateful for his elegant comrades. Word reaches the Emperor's office that Alfred has suppressed the Headless Knights' advanced troops. The Emperor confirms that the advanced troops were defeated. He laughs, stating that everything is going according to his plan. The Imperial Chancellor, August, confirms that the Zaragatos immigrants were the leading force. The Emperor compliments August's slyness in deliberately luring them into a fight. The Emperor clarifies the goal was to frame the immigrants as rioters against Imperial troops. August adds that since the Zaragatos tribe is already viewed as an enemy, this narrative will be easy to sell. He explains that once news reporters spread the story, public opinion will quickly turn against Brim Cross. The Emperor praises August's impressive work, who says the final step is all that remains. August outlines the final step, proposing at the next Imperial Council that sacrifices be collected from Brim Cross's immigrant population. The Emperor gloats that Alfred's plans have been thwarted. However, back in Brim Cross, a relaxed Alfred muses that this is merely what his enemies might think. Lisa panics that the Zaragatos people will be sacrificed, and Thylos adds that other demi-human tribes will also be affected. Alfred clarifies that the party demanding sacrifices is the monster kind, not the Imperial Chancellor. He explains that because of this, the Imperial Council will need the monster kind's approval before acting. Lisa asks if the monster kind would really refuse sacrifices that include demi-humans. Thylos agrees that normally they would not. However, he expresses his confidence that Master Alfred already has a plan. Alfred smiles, confirming that it's quite simple, they just need to convince the monster kind. Lisa is aghast at the idea of convincing the monster kind, questioning if it's even possible. She points out that even if it works, it would just mean other people from the Empire would be sacrificed instead. Alfred reveals that the arrival of the Headless Knights has practically solved their problem. Alfred explains that the members of the Order are all death row prisoners and felons whose crimes warrant a death sentence. He continues that by offering them as the sacrifice, they can fulfill the requirement while also eliminating corruption from the Empire. Thylos and Lisa begin to understand the audacious plan. Thylos excitedly realizes the monster kind's demand for 10,000 sacrifices conveniently matches the number of headless knights. Lisa, shocked, asks if he's going to let the monster kind carry out their death sentences. She raises the main issue: can he actually convince the monster kind to accept this plan? Alfred admits that convincing them will be difficult, which is why he is leaving the negotiation to his ace in the hole. As Lisa wonders who this trump card could be, Alfred calls for the person to enter. The door creaks open, and Lisa and Thylos look on in anticipation. The visitor is revealed to be Ammon, the commander-in-chief of the Magic Guild, whom Alfred tasks with proving his worth. Lisa screams internally, horrified that Alfred's supposed ace is actually his archenemy. Ammon walks alone, questioning the impossible task he has been given. He finds himself on the outskirts of the imposing monster-kind capital. He wonders why he was sent on a negotiation mission with zero chance of success. His apprehension stems from his target, Leviathan, the monster kind's human negotiation representative, the very one who once cut off his fingers on a whim. He shudders, knowing that even slightly upsetting her could have dire consequences. He recalls that for a human to even speak of negotiations is considered sacrilege, as they are only meant to obey. Facing this grim reality, Ammon briefly considers rebelling against Cedric. He quickly dismisses the thought of rebellion, knowing he has no hope of victory in a direct confrontation. A desperate idea forms: if he could enlist the monster kind's help by informing Leviathan of her son's death, he might stand a chance. Overwhelmed by the impossible situation, Ammon sinks into despair, unsure of what to do. Ammon lets out a silent, internal scream of frustration. The scene shifts to the negotiation itself, where Leviathan calmly informs a kneeling Ammon that she understands his demands. Leviathan expresses unease about the offering consisting solely of death row inmates. Ammon apologetically explains that he informed his superiors it was an impossible request. Sensing the proposal wasn't his idea, Leviathan remarks that the Facilia Empire seems unaware of its own history. She asks Ammon if he knew they once made a similar demand long ago. Ammon is shocked, as this is not in any history books, and Leviathan offers to enlighten him. She explains that a millennium ago, the Empire mixed all kinds of criminals into their offering of 10,000 people. This led to major complaints from the monster kind. When Ammon questions this, Leviathan clarifies that they seek to indulge in a sense of superiority by inflicting unreasonable violence on their offerings. Leviathan elaborates that watching kind-hearted humans shiver in fear before being killed allows them to experience a unique sense of superiority. Ammon realizes she is talking about the power of absolute strength, the ability to kill without fear of being tried. She tells Ammon that this right, possessed from birth, is what defines the monster kind. With a cold gaze, she dismisses his proposal. She asks what fun could possibly be had in killing humans already on death row, stating it would be nothing more than carrying out the Empire's punishments for them. She questions if he truly intends for them to perform such menial labor. Ammon stammers, asking why this event isn't in their history books. With a chilling smile, Leviathan explains that it's simple: they murdered everyone responsible for that proposal, including those in charge. Ammon is left speechless with terror. Ammon throws himself to the floor, begging for forgiveness. Leviathan tells him not to apologize, as it's not his fault, instead blaming his careless superiors for their selfish decision. However, her expression turns sinister as she continues. Reminding him of the concept of collective responsibility, she turns to face him. She menacingly suggests that perhaps she should toy with his brain in place of his foolish superiors. Ammon's face contorts in pure horror. He recoils, shrieking in fear. Suddenly, a voice booms from the doorway, declaring they've heard enough. Leviathan whirls around, demanding to know who the intruder is. She angrily reminds the newcomer that they have entered her personal quarters. Ammon looks up, recognizing the intruder. Ammon identifies the man as Abaddon, the king of hell. Leviathan is utterly shocked by his appearance, demanding to know what could have possibly brought him here. The scene shifts to a different location, where Abaddon smirks. He asks a group of men if the preparations for the hunt are finished. Commander Graz of the Headless Knights cackles with excitement, thrilled that they can finally hunt demi-humans in public now that they are labeled as sacrifices. The Imperial Chancellor, August, informs him that they will also mobilize the Imperial Knights to surround Brim Cross. August orders them to begin by collecting 10,000 sacrifices from the Zaragatos immigrants' quarter. A man with a mustache points out that this would make the sacrifices entirely from the Zaragatos tribe. Graz eagerly asks Lord August what they should do with the other demi-humans. August gives them free rein to do as they please, and Graz erupts in a cheer. Graz excitedly confirms they can hunt, play and burn all they want. The man with the mustache gives his full approval. He states that it's all for the prosperity of the empire. Their discussion is interrupted by a woman who bursts in, excusing herself. August demands to know the cause of the ruckus. She breathlessly announces they've just received word from General Levitain. The messenger delivers the shocking news. General Levitain demands that the upcoming offering of 10,000 members be made up entirely of soldiers from the Order of the Headless Knights. The three men are left utterly stunned by this unexpected turn of events. Abaddon reacts with fury to the news, questioning the demand to sacrifice the Order of the Headless Knights. August points out that the monster kind typically prefer young women and children, while Abaddon demands to know the meaning of this sudden change. A flustered messenger explains that General Levitain's closest aide, Lord Bastille, came as a messenger himself. She presents the official letter containing their demands. August notes that Lord Ammon's signature is on the document, and Abaddon realizes with horror that the Empire has already agreed to the arrangement. August crushes the paper in his fist, furious that this has happened again. Both he and Abaddon seethe with anger, cursing Ammon for getting in their way. Commander Graz despairs, believing that with Ammon's involvement, they will be unable to overturn the decision. After dismissing the messenger, August wonders aloud how Ammon managed to convince the monster kind. Abaddon brings them back to the immediate crisis, figuring out how to resolve the problem of losing the Headless Knights. He panics, exclaiming that this is terrible news, as the Knights were meant to be their main force in the coup. Abaddon curses their luck, realizing they will need to redo their entire plan. Commander Graz urgently tells them to wait. He refuses to accept being offered as a sacrifice, declaring that there is no way they will agree to the arrangement. Graz proclaims that if they are to be killed as sacrifices, they would rather choose to fight the Empire and run. Abaddon is shocked, asking if Graz is seriously declaring that he'll rebel against the Empire. Graz declares they can call it a rebellion if they want, and threatens to take the two of them hostage. August calmly raises a hand, halting Graz's advance. August suddenly bursts with excitement, declaring that a rebellion is an excellent idea. Graz is left utterly confused by this reaction. August explains that since the Headless Knights are necessary for their plan, they have a shared interest. He calmly assures Graz that there is no scenario where they would abandon him. Graz argues that they can't justify the monster kind, who demanded them as sacrifices. August calmly agrees, admitting they are unable to go against their will. With a cunning smile, he reveals his solution. The Order of the Headless Knights need only to rebel against the Empire. Graz is completely baffled, demanding to know what August means. August clarifies that the rebellion is just a pretense. In reality, the entire Order of the Headless Knights will desert the Empire. Abaddon catches on, realizing they can claim the Knights defied their orders to be sacrificed and deserted instead. August confirms this, and Abaddon notes it would be a painful but effective excuse. August explains that since the Knights are known criminals, the monster kind would find it plausible that they would defy orders. Graz, now understanding, asks what they are supposed to do. August orders him to return to his barracks immediately. He continues, instructing Graz to assemble his entire order by tonight and escape the capital under the cover of darkness. August tells them to make for Kadath Laguna, explaining that its ancient tunnel network will make them impossible for pursuers to find. Graz protests, worried they will quickly run out of provisions in the old ruins. August reassures him, promising to provide all necessary supplies until the day of the coup. He hints at the rewards that will come once their coup succeeds. August promises them new identities, explaining that officially the Headless Knights will be declared either killed in action or missing. Graz asks what kind of new identities they will receive. Abaddon smiles, promising that after he becomes emperor, he will welcome them as esteemed knights, granting Graz a noble title. Elsewhere, Cedric correctly deduces that his enemies are in the middle of arranging the Headless Knight's escape. His pink-haired companion is amazed he could predict so much, but Cedric simply states that the possibilities are endless. He explains that even if the Knights turned on the Chancellor, it would just mean his enemies were taking themselves out. Cedric states that any other scenario wouldn't need his intervention, making it pointless to consider them. His blonde-haired companion realizes this means Cedric already has a plan in mind for the scenario where the Knights flee. Cedric confirms this with a confident smirk. He looks out the window, musing that he never imagined he would have to use two of his trump cards. Cedric's thoughts trail off as the scene shifts to the Great Kyana Bridge, where the headless knights are escaping. One of the knights complains, wondering why they have to flee in the middle of the night. A sharp female voice belonging to Mephistopheles hushes him, reminding him that this is supposed to be a stealth operation. The aide is revealed to be Mephistopheles, an associate of Lord Astaroth. She reports to Lord Astaroth that events are unfolding exactly as Sir Cedric predicted. She confirms that the target army is currently advancing across the Great Bridge. Lord Astaroth reflects on Cedric's demand for 10,000 souls instantly, calling it a luxurious request. He considers the forces he commands, stars, water, wind, and all matter of the cosmic universe. He speaks of a power woven into a tapestry, enshrined for 10 millennia and bathed in prayers. He prepares to use a scroll, identifying it as number 13. Astaroth calls it his most prized secret art, never imagining he would have to use it today. Astaroth reflects on the payment he received, the hair of Abaddon and Cedric, which he recognizes as primordial magical factors of divine worth. He smiles, finding it to be a truly pleasant transaction. Watching the knights in his crystal ball, he declares it is time to commence. He unleashes a primordial ritual magic called Grand Path, causing a massive vortex of energy to swirl around the bridge. The 10,000 souls are sent crossing the boundary into a dimension of red skies and scorched earth. Mephistopheles announces that she is guiding the sacrificial lambs to the realm of monsters. She cheerfully tells them they are to be presented to the 100 generals who await at their destination. The knights materialize in a dark, unfamiliar place as Mephistopheles announces their destination is Levitain. Commander Graz looks around in shock, asking where they are as Mephistopheles glares at him. The headless knights find themselves abruptly transported to a dark, unfamiliar location, questioning where they are. One of them spots a figure in the distance and shouts for the others to look. Recognizing a monster kind, they panic, while Mephistopheles watches them, her expression cold as she snaps her fingers. Suddenly, they are teleported once again, this time into a vast pillared hall. Commander Graz demands to know what's happening. His men's attention is drawn upward to the balconies high above. The balconies are filled with countless monster kind, looking down on them. The headless knights tremble in fear. A crushing pressure fills the air as Graz realizes the gravity of their situation. The scene shifts to several days prior. In a grand throne room, Levitain recoils in shock, recognizing their uninvited guest as Abaddon, a king of hell. Abaddon greets her casually, acknowledging their long acquaintance. He then turns his attention to the other person present, Ammon. Ammon wonders if Abaddon's arrival is a lifeline sent by Cedric, though he's never met the demon lord before. Levitain is bewildered by the king of hell's presence in the monsterkind capital. Composing herself, Levitain asks Abaddon what brings him to the human realm. He cryptically replies that a friend called for him, and he decided to enjoy some human wine. Abaddon mentions hearing an interesting story about the headless knight's sacrifice. Levitain cautiously asks if that is the story he is referring to. Levitain acknowledges her reputation as the god of battle who loves conflict. With a smirk, Abaddon asks if she would hold a small welcoming ceremony for him. He proposes a fitting event for his welcome, a battle between her 100 generals and the 10,000 human knights. Levitain is stunned by the proposal. Abaddon reassures her that her generals will be safe, appealing to her known love of torment. Abaddon insists that she put on a show for him and accept Ammon's proposal. Levitain pushes back, stating that their service to the kings of hell is in the past. Abaddon's gaze is unyielding as he repeats his demand. Reluctantly, Levitain agrees, but warns that this could be seen as interference in their domestic affairs. Abaddon concedes her point, acknowledging that her people are now an independent nation. Believing she has convinced him, Levitain breathes a sigh of relief and offers to arrange for wine. However, Abaddon's expression darkens as he turns on her, stating that her refusal means something else entirely. With a menacing grin, Abaddon declares that her refusal is tantamount to a declaration of war against him. Levitain is aghast, unable to comprehend his logic, as he explains that he has many kings of hell as drinking buddies. He elaborates that by defying him, she is picking a fight with dozens of kings of hell and their servants at once. Levitain grows dizzy at the implication. She realizes that manifesting so many powerful beings in the human realm would be disastrous. It would be a declaration of war against the very god who sealed them in the underworld. Abaddon confirms her fears, stating that he is always ready for a fight. The sheer demonic pressure overwhelms Levitain. Realizing she is facing a true demon, she defeatedly acquiesces to his demand. Back in the present, the Headless Knights clamor in confusion. Mephistopheles is shocked, realizing her master Astaroth must be involved due to the powerful teleportation magic. She struggles to understand, as Abaddon and Astaroth should have no connection. Recalling the exchange between Abaddon and Ammon, a startling realization dawns on Mephistopheles. She glances at Ammon's distant figure, admitting she underestimated him. She never suspected that he was a mediator of the underworld. Ammon, from his own vantage point, pieces things together, surprised by both Abaddon and Astaroth's involvement. He concludes that the person pulling the strings must be him. Ammon realizes that Cedric's power knows no bounds. Meanwhile, Abaddon sits on a throne, musing on the prospect of fighting the god who once sealed them. Abaddon decides that now is not the time for a war with the gods. Bluffing goes against his principles, but for an old friend he can make an exception, thinking that Cedric now owes him. With the decision made, Mephistopheles gives the order to begin the massacre. At Mephistopheles' command, the 100 generals leap from the balconies. They descend upon the terrified Headless Knights below. The slaughter is immediate and brutal. The generals tear through them with ease, leaving a trail of blood and dismembered bodies. One of the generals, a woman with a massive blade, cuts down several knights in a single swing. She turns her cold gaze on Graz, who can only scream for her to wait. In a desperate plea, Graz claims he's not a bad guy, and that they're only being killed because they're death row prisoners. He tries to downplay his crimes, stating he's only in prison for assaulting and killing a few hundred girls. The words die in his throat as a spear pierces his chest. Graz collapses, shaking in terror, realizing this isn't a battle but an execution. In his final moments, he screams for somebody to save him. In the aftermath of the slaughter, the souls of the sacrificed knights are gathered into a large, ornate urn. A subordinate approaches General Levitain, announcing that the collection is complete. Levitain, however, is in a foul mood. In a flash, she strikes down the subordinate, stating that explaining the obvious is unnecessary. She declares that those who cannot make simple observations have no right to live. The remaining servants tremble as she orders them to stay silent until she gives a command. Her sharp gaze falls upon Ammon. He flinches as she calls his name, stammering as he asks what she needs. Levitain reflects on Ammon's newfound importance. Since he was able to get both Abaddon and Astaroth involved, she can no longer afford to treat him lightly. Denied the chance to torment her offerings, Levitain seethes with anger. She demands to know the name of Ammon's direct superior. Terrified, he names Emperor Aurelius of the Facilia Empire. Levitain scoffs, dismissing him as a mere puppet. With an intense glare, she presses him for the name of the true ruler of the empire. Ammon hesitates, a look of realization dawning on his face. He finally reveals that the one in control is Lord Robert, number 2 of the 10 Great Lords. Ammon adds that Robert's assistant, Lord August, is number 3, and together they are the de facto rulers. Her eyes narrowing, Levitain fixes on her new targets. She gives a chilling order to her subordinates, bring her torture instruments. One of them questions the command, only to be immediately decapitated. She repeats that she has no need for subordinates who cannot understand her. In a furious roar, she demands they bring her most painful and durable instruments from her collection immediately. Levitain decides to direct her rage at the 2 fools of the Empire. Elsewhere in Brimcross Park, a young woman named Lisa throws a tantrum. She screams her refusal to cooperate as her companion, Elfie, asks why she is being so difficult. Lisa argues that since the next offering is a year away, they should be preparing to fight monsterkind. Elfie confirms this, explaining they need to be able to fight without relying on Sir Cedric and Lord Abaddon. Lisa understands the goal, but questions the nature of their current preparations. She demands to know why their preparations involve scooping waste from a public bathroom, declaring she will not do it. Elfie tries to reason with her, explaining that Sir Cedric's lifespan is limited, and they must find ways to manage without him. Lisa cuts her off, saying she understands, but still wants to know what this has to do with their task. Elfie bluntly states they are collecting solid and liquid refuse. Lisa, disgusted, repeats that she understood the first time. She demands an explanation from their other companion, Al, who calmly agrees to explain. Al begins his lesson, explaining that human refuse contains nitrogen. When mixed with straw over time, it can be used to create saltpeter or potassium nitrate. Lisa is utterly confused by the scientific explanation. He adds that the soil around public bathrooms is rich in the necessary microbes. He continues, stating that by wetting and boiling the soil to remove impurities, they can collect high-purity potassium nitrate. Lisa, looking at an example rock, is grossed out, but Al tells her not to worry about it. He then instructs her to mix the result with charcoal and sulfur. Lisa watches, still skeptical. Al explains that they must grind it into a fine powder. Finally, Al explains that if they seal the powder tightly in a container and light it on fire. His grin is manic as he demonstrates the result. They get a massive explosion. Lisa and Elfie are stunned speechless by the demonstration. Al explains that once they learn the process, anyone can use this power, and now it's time to collect the ingredients. He asks Lisa if she understands now. Awestruck, she can only agree, admitting that Al is incredible. Meanwhile, Lord August receives news that the Order of the Headless Knights has gone missing. Lord Robert panics, realizing their main force for the coup is gone, but August tries to calm him. An aide bursts in unannounced with an emergency. Robert furiously demands to know why she interrupted them. The terrified aide can only stammer as a figure appears in the doorway behind her. The two lords look up to see Levitain standing there. With a smirk, she greets the insects and introduces herself as a member of the 100 Generals. While taking a break from their work, Lisa expresses her doubts about the explosion Alfred showed them. She questions if it's truly a strong enough trump card against monster kind compared to high-level magic. Alfred asks if she understands that defeating the monsters is actually quite easy, and Lisa guesses he could probably beat them all by himself. Lisa is surprised when Alfred flatly states that defeating the monster kind alone would be a tall order, even for him. Elfie chimes in, teasing that she thinks Sir Cedric could likely pull it off. Alfred grows serious, explaining that with 100 formidable generals, even his hands would be tied if they all targeted him. However, he adds that there is a practical way of dealing with them, such as requesting cooperation from powerful allies. Alfred clarifies that while convincing powerful allies would be difficult, it is possible, and Elfie agrees this would ensure humanity's victory. But Alfred dismisses this, stating that it would simply result in him fighting on the front lines with borrowed power. He asserts with certainty that humanity cannot evolve by simply being given what they want. Alfred explains his desire for humanity to be able to fight new threats with their own intelligence and bravery long after he is gone. He wants the people of the Empire to be able to do that. He tells them he wants them to be able to do what Lisa and Thylos are doing right now. Elfie reflects on how much Sir Cedric has changed, noting that his past self would have simply exterminated the monsters alone. Elfie inwardly wonders if his change came from being betrayed by the three sages. Or perhaps it was from seeing the growth of Lisa and Thylos. Alfred says that all that being said, the two of them are still a constant source of worry for him, causing them to spill their drinks in shock. Elfie grins, recognizing that his tendency to be indirect with his feelings hasn't changed at all. Elfie knows that deep down, Alfred recognizes their abilities. She steers the conversation back to the topic at hand. Alfred agrees, reiterating that the destructive power of their explosives is lacking compared to high-level magic. He then poses a question to Lisa. What does she think is the 100 Generals' greatest advantage over them? Lisa tentatively suggests the vestments of the Nether. Alfred confirms she is correct, explaining that the vestments of the Nether neutralize all forms of magic, including physical augmentation. He gives an example, stating a rock thrown with magically enhanced strength would be rendered useless. However, a purely physical attack would either not trigger the vestment's effect or only face a very weak barrier. Alfred explains that while he previously used a complex method to bypass the vestments, it's impractical for the average person. That is why it's so important to mass-produce these explosives to empower every human to fight back. Alfred adds that he is also commissioning dwarves to create new steel weapons of his own design. Thylos realizes that, as far as he knows, such a method for creating gunpowder didn't exist before. In the past, creating it from saltpeter would have been considered worthless since magic could cause explosions much faster. Alfred acknowledges this is likely why the method never became widespread, but inventing a whole new weapon from it is another matter entirely. Thylos is shaken, thinking that the speed at which Master Alfred is inventing these ideas is far too fast. Thylos silently wonders where in the world Alfred gained this knowledge. Their conversation is interrupted by a woman named Ophelia, who rushes over to address Master Alfred. She reports that the Emperor has ordered an assembly of the 10 Great Lords. Ophelia informs him that General Levitain of the 100 Generals has arrived in the capital. The scene shifts to Robert's office. Levitain sadistically gestures to a chair covered in spikes, telling one of the captive lords to take a seat. Levitain calls it his exclusive seat. The man screams in agony as he is forced into the spiked chair, and Levitain remarks that he must be overcome with joy. She calls him adorable but warns that his body won't last, adding that they have only just begun. With one man twitching in the chair, she turns her attention to the other. She calls him a piece of trash that she prepared in advance. Her next victim groans as his eyes are forced open with metal hooks. Levitain looks on with a pleased expression. The man pants in exhaustion and pain. He begs for help. Levitain coolly informs him that it's only been 6 hours. Looking at the dryness of his pupils, she gleefully declares that he is guaranteed to lose his eyesight. The man screams in terror. Levitain smiles sweetly, reassuring him not to worry, as she'll be sure to restore his sight with healing magic. Watching the horrific scene, Emperor Aurelius wonders how she could treat a pillar of the Empire this way for a simple slight. The Emperor realizes the grim reality of their subordination to the monster kind. Levitain addresses him, stating that she is making an example of the 2 lords. She reminds him that she ordered all 10 great lords to assemble. She points out that one is still absent, and therefore the Emperor must take responsibility. With a terrifying smile, Levitain invites the Emperor to join their game as a guest of honor. The young Emperor can only stare back in absolute horror. A guard urges the Emperor to begin as Levitain lunges, commanding him to come forward. As the terrified Emperor wobbles, a voice calls out, "Your Majesty." Alfred appears suddenly, catching the stumbling Emperor. The Emperor recognizes him as Alfred Baliol, who announces that he is at his service. Adjutant Ammon looks on in disbelief as his commander confronts the monster general, asking if he was planning to torture the Emperor. With a sinister grin, Levitain confirms that was indeed her intention. She turns, noticing the newcomers for the first time, and addressing the commander directly as Ammon. The adjutant nervously watches the standoff between his commander and Levitain. He believes his commander should be able to handle it, but is unsure how he'll defuse the situation. Commander Ammon steps forward, declaring that since he was late, he will take the punishment and tells Levitain to do as she pleases with him. Adjutant Ammon is shocked that his commander would seemingly obey the monster general. Levitain, however, is ecstatic, praising his commendable mindset. She admits she's grown bored of torturing old men and finds the prospect of getting her hands on someone so young and beautiful to be a welcome change. With a smirk, Commander Ammon turns not to Levitain, but to his own stunned adjutant. Levitain is left speechless by the sudden turn of events. He tells Adjutant Ammon that he knows what to do, challenging him to show who he intends to support. Adjutant Ammon screams in panic, realizing the impossible position he's been put in. As Commander Ammon casually asks about the chair, Levitain gleefully calls him an obedient little sheep. The adjutant realizes that helping his commander would mean openly defying the monster kind. He's trapped. If he does nothing, his commander will surely kill him later. He understands that Ammon is intentionally putting immense pressure on him. Levitain excitedly urges Ammon to take his seat. Overwhelmed, Adjutant Ammon wonders what to do. Levitain offers to bind the commander so he cannot escape. She continues to cheer him on. The adjutant lets out a terrified scream. Suddenly, Adjutant Ammon lunges forward, pushing Levitain back and putting himself between her and his commander. The Imperial officials are stunned by the sudden turn of events. Adjutant Ammon can't believe he just fought back against one of the monster kind. Levitain recovers, looking at Commander Ammon with a dangerous expression. She furiously asks if he truly intends to defy her. Steeling himself, Adjutant Ammon claims she has misunderstood the situation. He states that their treaty with the monster kind only requires 10,000 sacrifices a year, an agreement they have honored. The other lords panic, begging Ammon to stop before he angers the general and dooms the empire. Levitain scoffs at the mere slave. The adjutant cuts her off, insisting her understanding is flawed. Amused, Levitain remarks that she thought she had made things clear before, but it seems her point was lost on him. Adjutant Ammon claims he is acquainted with both Abaddon and Astaroth and is certain the 2 kings of hell will not forgive her transgressions. Levitane's expression freezes as she realizes their interference might have been part of Ammon's plan all along. The onlookers gasp in shock at the revelation. The young emperor is stunned, wondering when the commander-in-chief could have met the kings of hell. Levitane pushes back, stating that the kings of hell are under a divine seal, making it difficult for them to manifest. With a confident laugh, Adjutant Ammon counters that he believes Abaddon has already made his stance clear. He reminds her that the king of hell always takes every fight that comes his way. The threat leaves Levitane horrified. Shaken, Levitane asks Commander Ammon if he is serious, questioning if the kings of hell truly intend to go to war. As his commander smirks, Adjutant Ammon feels a sinking feeling, realizing the magnitude of the bluff he just made. The adjutant's mind races with panic, realizing he just used a king of hell's name without permission and unilaterally declared war. His stomach churns as he wonders if he made the right choice and why his commander remains silent. Deciding to go all in, Adjutant Ammon presses his advantage, asking what she would do if the Demon King's forces were already prepared to attack their capital on his signal. The threat of the Demon King's combined forces leaves Levitane utterly stunned. The Imperial officials can't fathom how their commander-in-chief could have such a deep connection to the kings of hell. The Emperor, however, comes to a realization: Commander Ammon must be the underworld mediator. Her bravado shattered, Levitane asks Ammon for his demands. Adjutant Ammon lays out their terms. As long as the Empire continues to offer its 10,000 annual sacrifices, the monsterkind will keep their interference in imperial politics to a minimum. With that, he simply asks her to leave in peace. As he turns away, still trembling from the confrontation, Adjutant Ammon adds a final chilling addendum: that is all, for now. In Brimcross Garden, Cedric sits with Ammon, reflecting on how they've bought themselves a year's time against the monster kind. Ammon reports that domain management is going well, with tax revenues turning significant losses into high profits. Ammon adds that with the system for mass-producing gunpowder in place, their plans are progressing smoothly. Nearby, Deathblaze examines the new material that she was told about, identifying it as gunpowder. She lights a fuse to test its properties. The gunpowder erupts with a startling crackle, surprising Deathblaze. From his seat, Cedric observes her reaction. Deathblaze notes that while gunpowder is already part of their strategies, this version is on a completely different level. Ammon explains that the Empire also uses gunpowder, but only in times of war. The revelation leaves Lisa stunned, realizing Al didn't invent it. Lisa voices her confusion, believing Al had invented gunpowder. Deathblaze clarifies that the two types are completely different. The kind her people use is a magical item, created by using rituals to imbue ash with the blessing of fire spirits. Ammon correctly deduces that this fire magic gunpowder requires regular maintenance to maintain its power. Cedric adds that to pierce the monster kind's defenses, a purely physical weapon is needed. This means the magically created gunpowder would be useless against them. Lisa, however, says something else has been bothering her. She gestures towards the scene of Ammon kneeling before Deathblaze. She asks why Commander-in-Chief Ammon is kneeling there in such a gloomy state. With a smirk, Cedric explains that it's simple. Ammon used a king of hell's name without permission and said something that could easily be taken as a declaration of war. Cedric continues, stating that he is having Deathblaze, a servant of a king of hell, interrogate him. Ammon shouts in protest, claiming Cedric was the one who pressured him into it. Deathblaze chuckles, calling Cedric a mean-spirited man for threatening him over nothing. Cedric sternly calls Ammon's name, jolting him. Deathblaze reassures Ammon that he has no reason to fear for his life, as her king, Lord Abaddon, doesn't fret over such trivial matters. Ammon breathes a sigh of relief. In fact, she adds, Lord Abaddon is enthusiastic about war and would fight alone if he had to, a fact that Lisa finds fitting for the battle-crazed king of hell. Lisa then asks what the point of the interrogation is. Cedric apologizes, admitting he was only joking and has a different reason for summoning Ammon. He reveals his true plan, to appoint Ammon as the acting governor of Brimcross to serve as his decoy. Both Ammon and Lisa are shocked by the announcement. Cedric explains that both the 10 Great Lords and the monster kind are now wary of Ammon, while he himself remains off their radar. Since they are still short on resources, Cedric declares his intention to move in secret to the mines in the dwarves' domain. Lisa worries about the danger of leaving Ammon as a replacement while he's away. Cedric coolly states that it won't be an issue. Cedric clarifies that Ammon will be a substitute in name only, with Simon and Ophelia handling any hands-on management. He views Ammon as a convenient pawn to attract their foes' undivided attention. As Ammon seethes, he thinks about how not only Cedric but even his followers are mocking him now. He grips his monocle, internally screaming that he hasn't submitted to Cedric's command. Ammon fumes, realizing he is simply unable to defy Cedric, a fact that causes the others to laugh at his expense. Far away, the scene shifts to the menacing monster capital, Evil Garden. Within the capital, the monster queen reflects on the underworld mediator, Ammon. She considers the danger he poses so great she cannot even measure it. Snapping her fingers, she summons her subordinate. She orders immediate preparations, declaring her intent to head for the dwarves' territory. The subordinate is shocked, realizing what this means. The queen confirms their suspicion, stating she will go to the long-forgotten underground imperial city. She calls it the gateway from which their kind came, their city of beginnings. The subordinate asks if Ammon is truly so dangerous that she must go to such lengths. The queen admits that since they cannot tell if his threat was genuine, she must assume the worst and break the seal to the primordial beast. Meanwhile, in the Brimcross governor's residence, Ammon sits in his new temporary office. He curses his situation, having been relocated from the main headquarters to this temporary branch. He realizes this move establishes the Magic Guild's presence, making it harder for the 10 great lords to attack the city. In the blink of an eye, the entire board has shifted in Cedric's favor. As he wonders just how far Cedric intends to go, a strange vibration emanates from a large mirror in the room. Ammon jumps back in shock. He recognizes the visitor as Mephistopheles. She assumes he is the fool who used Lord Astaroth's name without permission to declare aggression against the monster kind. He recalls Deathblaze's words that while they have many ways to crush the monster-kind country, it wouldn't be painless. Mephistopheles leans in, her expression menacing, and warns him that while Lord Abaddon may have forgiven him, her lord is not so kind. With his monocle cracking under the pressure, she demands a satisfactory explanation. In the northern underworld stands the imposing castle of the King of Hell Astaroth. Ammon's heart pounds in his chest as he walks. He makes his way down a long, dark dungeon corridor, approaching his grim destination. The cells are filled with moaning zombies clawing desperately at the bars. Ammon jolts back in shock. He frantically wonders what is going on here. Beside him, Mephistopheles casually questions why Astaroth would keep zombies in his castle. Looking closer, Ammon has a horrifying realization. The zombies were once human. Brought before Lord Astaroth, the King of Hell states that he heard Ammon used his name to declare war, an act Mephistopheles dismisses as troublesome. With a glare, Astaroth tells Ammon that he has been deeply upset. In response, Ammon prostrates himself on the floor, stammering out a desperate apology. As Ammon trembles on the floor, Mephistopheles gets his attention. She tells him to look at something. She presents a crystal orb. The orb flashes with a bright light, showing him a vision. Ammon stares in disbelief at the image. He recognizes the tormented figure of a man in a horned mask as Ezekiel. He wonders what Ezekiel is doing there. Ezekiel's hand shakes as he begs for help. His body seems to be melting. He is in utter agony, his cries for help echoing. The desperate pleas for help overwhelm Ammon. The vision seems to splash out from the orb, startling him. Mephistopheles explains that Lord Astaroth is simply asking him a question. She asks Ammon if he wishes to end up like Ezekiel, prompting another terrified apology. Ammon is terrified, believing this place is a purgatory where Astaroth will turn him into another test subject. Mephistopheles tells him not to misunderstand. She reassures him that her lord is a rationalist who has no intention of taking his life and tells him to raise his head. Mephistopheles proposes a simple arrangement to make things right. She reveals a powerful grimoire called the Necronomicon. She summons 3 more forbidden texts, the Pinacotic manuscripts, the Book of Eben, and the Unauspicilichen Kulten. Mephistopheles says that as Commander-in-Chief, Ammon should know of these grimoires and instructs him to keep them on his person at all times. Ammon recognizes them as legendary forbidden grimoires, said to drive their readers insane with a single page. Astaroth adds that the grimoires have souls and are linked directly to him. Mephistopheles clarifies that the books will now be their observers to ensure Ammon makes no more mistakes. Mephistopheles explains that by using the grimoires, Ammon will be able to borrow Astaroth's tremendous power. Ammon is stunned by the offer to borrow the power of a king of hell. She notes that since Sir Cedric is an old acquaintance of her lord's, it is only natural they aid his subordinate. However, she warns that there is a catch every time he borrows this power. They explain that he will be utilizing a contract with a king of hell, and naturally, he will be required to pay a price. Ammon panics internally, realizing this is a terrible contract to enter into. Astaroth explains that his power is so great, humans cannot resist the opportunity to use it, which is why it is called a devil's pact. Ammon is shocked that the demon king read his mind. Astaroth declares that this temptation, the punishment of power, is what he will give him. As the Necronomicon pulses in Ammon's hands, Astaroth asks how long he will be able to withstand its temptation. Ammon feels no relief, understanding that activating this contract would mean a fate worse than death. Mephistopheles acknowledges that carrying all the books would be cumbersome. She gestures to the 3 remaining grimoires. She declares that the remaining 3 grimoires will go inside of him, and they fly toward him in a flash. Ammon watches in horror as the grimoires enter his body. From the throne, Astaroth and Mephistopheles issue a final warning: they will be watching him. As her form dissolves into shadow, she informs Ammon that he can activate the contract anytime with the Necronomicon. She explains that should he need more power, the Underworld's commercial nation will be available to him. The Astaroth business nation will be awaiting him. Lisa excitedly remarks on how lively the place is, as expected of a dwarf nation. Cedric confirms their arrival, noting that this is the home of the continent's leading weapons manufacturer. They stand at the entrance to the great dwarven city carved into a mountain, Duran Bardo. Inside a dwarven marketplace, Lisa marvels at the high-quality weapons and armor on display. Leopold agrees, noting that dwarves are always the first choice for quality armaments, a sentiment Ruja echoes, mentioning that even her own Zaragatos tribe relies on their craftsmanship. Alfred suddenly turns his attention to Vice Commander Leopold and Princess Ruja. With a cold stare, he reminds them that he left them in charge of Brim Cross's defenses and demands to know why they are here. The two are struck silent with shock. Leopold and Ruja immediately prostrate themselves, apologizing and explaining they couldn't help but accompany him. Alfred sighs, telling them to stop, as he had already considered this possibility. He reveals he asked Ophelia to be prepared to take over, a level of foresight that deeply impresses Lisa. Thylos steps in to brief the group on their location, Duran Bardo. He explains that the nation holds a monopoly over mineral roots and dwarven craftsmen with somewhat restricted foreign exchange. Lisa finds this hard to believe given the bustling market, but Thylos clarifies that the strict rules only apply to minerals and craftsmen, the two things they are keen on procuring. Alfred reveals that they have an opportunity to influence a closed mine, which Thylos confirms. Thylos explains that a giant monster has recently taken control of the mines. To avoid the considerable losses a military campaign would incur, the nation has opted to rely on certain experts to handle the problem. These experts, Thylos continues, are high-ranking adventurers being assembled by the Adventurers Guild. Alfred declares that this is their chance. Resolving an issue of this scale should grant them an audience with the royal family. Lisa quickly understands the plan. They will use this opportunity to win over the royals and open trade routes with the dwarves. With their objective set, Alfred announces their next move with a wild grin. It is time for them to become adventurers. The group arrives at the Adventurers Guild in the dwarven country of Duran Bardo. Inside, the hall is filled with the clamor of adventurers. Alfred sits at a table, already beginning to eat, and simply asks for more. Despite his elegant table manners, Alfred's stomach seems bottomless as he continuously orders more food. Lisa watches, amazed at his appetite. Meanwhile, Deathblade's own table manners are noted to be quite horrendous as she messily devours a large piece of meat. Lisa questions why they are eating when they are supposed to be fighting a monster. Alfred patiently explains that a group of new faces can't simply demand to join an S-rank quest of national importance. When Lisa asks what they should do, he points to Deathblaze, stating they will use their connections. Deathblaze reveals she was once an S-rank dragonperson adventurer. Deathblaze proudly boasts that 50 years ago, anyone in the business would have heard of her adventurer alias, Deathblaze, the sizzling dragon cutie. She adds that this was before she became one of Lord Abaddon's generals and that she was incredibly popular, but she could not possibly wear her old outfit anymore as it would ruin her image. Alfred explains the connection. Before joining the demon realm, Deathblaze used to look after a fledgling adventurer who is now the guild master of this branch. Lisa realizes this is what he meant by connections. They are dining while they wait for him, though he appears to be absent. As the group settles in, Lisa remarks on how complicated everything is, questioning the relationship between monster kind and demons. Thylos begins to explain the history. Monster kind are a mixed breed born from unions between demons and humans. He clarifies that demons were sealed in their own realm by God and cannot enter the human realm, but monster kind are not affected by that seal. As a result of persecution by the demons, the monster kind fled the demon realm and founded their own nation in the human realm, making it difficult for demons like King Abaddon to act against them. Ryuja interjects, insisting that Lord Abaddon is the god of battle, not a king of hell, which Thylos dismisses as an academic classification. The others add to the complexity, explaining that members of the 100 Generals have a high concentration of a king of hell's blood, and that Deathblaze, originally a dragon person, became a demon later, and can only enter the human realm via a special ritual. Alfred concludes that the monster kind have caused much damage, and that is why they are here. Alfred states their goal is to make preparations to defeat these realm-jumping pests. As the guild hall buzzes around them, Lisa realizes what he means. First things first, they will have to clean up the mess the monster is making in the mines. Lisa's words are overheard by the other adventurers. From across the room, a man asks if they are truly planning to take on the giant nethersteel bug. He then bursts into uproarious laughter, calling it the best joke he has ever heard. Slamming his mug on a barrel, the man approaches them. He introduces himself as Marcus, an A-rank adventurer, and mocks them as run-of-the-mill brats. As the others whisper among themselves, Alfred calmly asks if there is something he needs. Marcus scoffs, telling the kiddos to go take on some F-rank chores first. Marcus roars that it is 100 years too early for them to take on an S-rank quest. Alfred stares back at him, his expression unreadable. Lisa finds the situation strangely nostalgic. A burly, eye-patch-wearing man named Marcus scoffs at the newcomers, declaring that starry-eyed brats are a common sight. The commotion draws the attention of the other adventurers, who recognize Marcus is picking a fight with another newbie and worry for the kid who has unfortunately caught his eye. Lisa whispers nervously to Alfred that Marcus seems determined to make them his problem, and Alfred calmly agrees. The other adventurers note that everyone is too intimidated by Marcus's above-average power to intervene, a classic guild dynamic. Marcus overhears their whispering and challenges them, asking if they are looking to run. He proudly introduces himself as none other than Marcus, the Boulder Crusher. Lisa thinks to herself that Al can probably handle someone like Marcus. Suddenly, the group remembers they are supposed to be operating in secret and shouldn't be drawing attention to themselves. In an attempt to de-escalate the situation, Lisa calls out for the receptionist. An elf receptionist with short hair turns to face them. The elf receptionist approaches and asks Marcus what the matter is. Lisa nervously explains that they are just unregistered civilians. Lisa correctly assumes Marcus is causing trouble for the newcomers, citing his track record of bullying. Marcus protests, calling it tough love, but Lisa dryly states she sees little difference. Lisa acknowledges Marcus's enthusiasm for educating new adventurers, but points out that the group are civilians unaffiliated with the guild. Lisa feels a wave of relief, thinking the elf receptionist is quite reasonable. However, Lisa's expression hardens as she adds that it is clear they intend to register eventually. Lisa recalls their arrogant claim of intending to exterminate the giant nethersteel bug in the mines. Lisa realizes the situation is not unfolding as she had hoped. The other adventurers murmur amongst themselves, commenting on the newbies' rotten luck and declaring them finished. The onlookers realize the newcomers have attracted not only Marcus, but also the infamous freshman tormentor, Lisa. Lisa calls the group foolish greenhorns for even speaking of an S-rank quest. Panicking, Lisa tries to explain that they are a special case and not like the others. Lisa chuckles, stating they are a prime example of brats who do not know their place in life. Emboldened, Marcus declares that no one will bail them out this time. To the shock of the onlookers, he unsheathes his massive greatsword. He prepares to show them what the great Boulder Crusher can do. With a tremendous swing, Marcus smashes his greatsword into the guild floor, roaring that he will show them what true power looks like. The force of the blow shatters the floorboards around Alfred. Lisa calmly informs Marcus that the cost of repairs will be deducted from his next reward, to which he scoffs. He boasts that this is the power of an A-rank adventurer. Marcus tells Alfred's group they have no hope of accepting an S-rank quest if they cannot do the same. The guild master of Duran Bardo, Gran Eisenhart, is introduced. He reflects that he hadn't expected a visit from Lady Deathblaze, a legendary adventurer from the Celestial Tiger's 5 Claws. He recalls how she was a great benefactor to him in his early days and resolves not to offend her at any cost. Suddenly, a loud boom from the guild hall interrupts his thoughts. Gran Eisenhart dashes toward the guild, cursing Marcus for causing trouble again. He wonders why adventurers are fleeing the building. Inside, Marcus stands amidst the wreckage, taunting Alfred's group and asking if he scared them. The guild master looks on, completely bewildered by the scene. Marcus notices that the young man before him doesn't look intimidated at all. Annoyed, he challenges Alfred directly. If he will not run away, then he must show his guts by trying to pull the massive sword from the floor. Alfred calmly asks if he is supposed to swing the sword around just as Marcus did, who confirms it's a test. Lisa sarcastically calls Marcus a kind soul, adding that there is little need to test them as their abilities are already clear. Marcus yells that his specially made greatsword is extremely heavy and demands Alfred show him what he's got. As Alfred approaches the sword, Marcus thinks that a little brat like him could never have the brawn to lift it. To his utter shock, Alfred pulls the greatsword from the floor with ease and tells his companions to stand back. With a fluid motion, Alfred swings the massive greatsword in a wide, powerful arc, the blade whistling through the air, leaving Marcus stunned. The force of the swing is immense, creating a powerful gust of wind that rushes past Marcus. The wind tears through the guild hall, demonstrating incredible power. Marcus stands frozen in terror, believing for a moment that he had been sliced to pieces and wondering if he was hallucinating. As the guild master watches in disbelief, Alfred looks back at Marcus with a smirk and asks if the demonstration was to his satisfaction. At the Brimcross Magic Guild's secondary headquarters, the Vice-Commander-in-Chief approaches Sir Ammon. He reports that they have received 3 documents from the acting Lord, Sir Simon, requesting the guild's assistance. The requests detail funding for skill training for the jobless, a new school, and improvements to the refugee camp. Ammon scoffs internally, dismissing the requests as simple charity work for what he considers the useless trash of society. He reflects that since his predecessor Cedric's passing, the guild has focused on maximizing profit through any means necessary. He fumes, feeling that Cedric's continuous posthumous demands to fund charities are becoming unreasonable. The vice-commander observes Ammon's serious expression, while Ammon internally worries about his share of the profits. The vice-commander notes Ammon's recent dedication to paperwork, even foregoing sleep. He then brings up Ammon's significant contributions to charity work since arriving in Brimcross. As Ammon examines the document, something catches his eye. He realizes these documents were likely prepared by Cedric before his departure and sent by Ophelia and Simon on a schedule. Ammon suddenly grins, believing he has found a crack in the ever-perfect Cedric's armor, an inexcusable error in the document. With manic glee, Ammon realizes Cedric misspelled a word on the 17th line. He muses that even Cedric was bound to make mistakes after writing hundreds of thousands of letters, though his errors were incredibly rare. Ammon remembers that he was the only one who ever corrected Cedric's work. Because Cedric's documents were so elegant, nobody else ever noticed the occasional mistake, expecting his work to be impeccable. Ammon celebrates, knowing he can notice Cedric's mistakes because he is always critical of his predecessor's actions. He believes that as long as he can spot these errors, the time for his counterattack will come. The vice-commander is bewildered, noticing that Ammon's stern expression softened the moment he mentioned charity work. Ammon claims that contributing to charity has always been a responsibility of the Magic Guild, a tradition he must continue. The vice-commander thinks about how many guild members see Ammon as a villain. However, he has recently observed Ammon's kindness to the townspeople, viewing him as a devoted man working for the Empire. He begins to theorize that Ammon's character changed drastically after his 2 fellow sages disappeared. He starts to believe his own hypothesis about Ammon might not be far off. The vice-commander imagines Ammon's weakness being exploited by the other sages or someone dear to him being taken hostage, forcing him to act evil. In his mind, Ammon eventually took matters into his own hands and put an end to their tyranny. He concludes that Ammon won back his freedom in a great battle. The compassionate man he sees today must be Ammon's true self. He believes the scars on Ammon's hand are proof of this struggle. He swells with pride, feeling honored to be Ammon's vice-commander, while Ammon is simply bored by his work. The vice-commander's sudden emotional outburst startles Ammon. A loud noise from the courtyard startles Ammon, and his vice-commander suggests they investigate from the terrace. They rush to the balcony railing to see what is happening. A massive crowd of townspeople cheers wildly, chanting, "Long live Sir Ammon." Ammon leans over the railing, completely stunned by the scene. Another guild member rushes in, breathlessly reporting that the townspeople are crowding the courtyard. Ammon snaps back that he can see that, demanding to know why it is happening. The guild member explains that the commotion is due to an article posted on every bulletin board in the city. He hands Ammon a newspaper, and Ammon demands to know what article it is. Ammon's eyes widen in shock as he reads. The vice commander explains that the article details all of Ammon's charity work and his criticisms of the annual sacrifices. He proudly declares that all of Ammon's efforts are paying off. Ammon panics, realizing that if this article becomes widespread, the monsterkind will learn that he opposes them. This public perception would undermine his carefully planned declaration of war. He feels his chances of pulling back are getting lower and wonders who could have written such an article. The guild member reveals the article was based on an interview with the Belial family. The source of the interview was Lord Alfred Belial, causing Ammon to curse Cedric, realizing it was all part of a plan. The vice commander has an epiphany, feeling he has failed to realize the truth despite being at Ammon's side. He recalls that the strict Sir Cedric always had a soft spot for Ammon, and now he understands that Cedric knew Ammon's true nature all along. He believes Cedric knew Ammon would succeed him, win the people's support, and lead the guild to a brighter future. With newfound resolve, the vice commander knows what he must do. He must return to the guild's primary headquarters to spread the word of Sir Ammon's true, kind-hearted character. He is determined to bring Ammon's true nature to light for everyone in the Empire to see. At the Duran Bardo Inn, Lisa exclaims how nice their room is, which Alfred confirms is the finest in town. Lisa glances aside, adding that while the place is nice, there is a certain issue. She is referring to the guild members profusely apologizing to a weary Alfred. Alfred asks the branch guild master, who is prostrating himself on the floor, to stop kowtowing. Gran Eisenhart apologizes for the trouble his guild caused Lady Deathblaze's party. He orders Marcus and Lisa to apologize, but Marcus grumbles about Lisa's lack of pride. Lisa coolly replies that she has no pride, prompting Marcus to tell her to get some. Lisa postpones discussions about the quest, deciding to let everyone recover from their trip. She dismisses them. After the guild members leave, Lisa notes that Marcus never apologized, but Alfred says he does not mind. He asks Lisa to confirm that adventurer registrations can be done with aliases instead of real names. He smirks, reminding her that it would be inconvenient for his name to be widely known, as they plan to cause a scene. Lisa confirms his intention is to keep his identity hidden while racking up achievements, and Alfred agrees, saying he will use a codename. She asks what kind of convenient name he has prepared. Alfred explains that for the grand task of eliminating the feared monster in the mines as a newbie, he has the perfect name. He slowly spells out the name he has chosen, Amon. With a confident grin, Alfred announces the name he will use for his adventurer registration, Ammon. In the